Chapter 9. Miss Marple Sees the Light. Later that same day, Detective Inspector Cornish also went to Gladys Dixon's home. The door was opened by a girl of about 15 with long fair hair. "Does Miss Gladys Dixon live here?"
"Gladys has gone away on holiday. A free trip, she said."
"Where's she gone? Can you give me an address?"
"I haven't got an address. She said she'd tell us when she got there."
"A free trip? So someone's paying for this holiday?"
"I suppose so. My sister hasn't got any money."
Cornish went back to the police station and talked to Chief Inspector Craddock. Cornish had already learned from the film studios that Gladys Dixon had taken a week's holiday, and that Marina Gregg had thought she had been given poisoned coffee. Craddock went straight to Gossington Hall. Jason Rudd seemed nervous and annoyed. "If you suspected that something was wrong with the coffee," said Craddock, "why didn't you tell the police?" "But I didn't think anything was wrong with it," said Jason. "I was really surprised about the poison. Since the day of the fete, my wife has thought that all her food and drink has tasted odd. And there's been another note. Here it is." Craddock looked at the printed note. It said, "It won't be long now. Prepare to die." "You've really no idea at all, Mr. Rudd, who sent it?" "No," said Jason. "It's like a sick joke." "But what about the coffee? You didn't even tell us about the test result." "No," said Jason, "but I had other things to think about. Poor Ella's death, and now Giuseppe. Inspector Craddock, when can I take my wife away? She's going mad." "I can understand that, but you will need to attend the inquests." "You do realise that her life is still in danger. But I must get her away from here, Craddock. I must." Marina was lying on the sofa in her bedroom, her eyes closed. She looked grey with tiredness. Her husband stood there for a moment, looking at her. Her eyes opened. "Was that Craddock man? What did he come about?" "Ella and Giuseppe." "Giuseppe? Have they found out who shot him?" "Not yet." "Did he say we could go away?" "He said not yet." "Why not? We must. I can't continue waiting day after day for someone to kill me. I can't. You must help me, Jason. You must do something. I'm frightened. There's an enemy here, and I don't know who it is. Someone who hates me. But why? Someone who wants me dead. But who is it? I was almost sure it was Ella. But now..." "You thought it was Ella?" Jason sounded shocked. "But why?" "Because she hated me. Don't men ever see these things? She was madly in love with you. But it can't be Ella, because Ella's dead. Oh, Jinx, Jinx." She jumped up and began walking quickly up and down. Jason looked at her. For a moment, he forgot that Marina was his wife. He was looking at her as a film director looks at an actress. She was wonderful. "It's all right, Marina. All right. I'll keep you safe." He took her arms and gently led her back to the sofa. "Oh, I'm a coward," she whispered. "A coward. If I knew who it was, and why. Get me my pills, the yellow ones, not the brown. I must have something to calm me." "Don't take too many, Marina." All right. Sometimes they don't have any effect now." She looked up at his face and smiled, a beautiful, loving smile. "Promise you'll take care of me, Jinx." "Always," said Jason Rudd. "To the end." Her eyes opened wide. "You looked so odd when you said that." Chief Inspector Craddock was tired and unhappy when he visited Miss Marple the next day. "I'm afraid things aren't going very well," he said. "2 murders in 24 hours. Miss Marple gave him a warm smile. "Come and sit down," she said. "Tell me all about it." "I think you probably know as much as I do. How about your Miss Knight? Perhaps she's the murderer."
"Now, why would Miss Knight be the murderer?" said Miss Marple, surprised.
"Because she's the most unlikely person."
"But," said Miss Marple, "it's always the most likely person. One thinks it's the wife or the husband, and very often it is."
"Do you mean Jason Rudd?" He shook his head. "That man is completely in love with Marina Gregg."
"I was speaking generally," said Miss Marple. "I agree with you that Jason Rudd cares with all his heart for Marina Gregg, and if he wanted to marry someone else, it would be easy for him. Film stars often get divorced. I've been reading all about it in Film Life, Film Talk, and The World of Film."
Craddock laughed. "It's very amusing to hear what kind of literature you've been studying," he said.
"I found it very interesting," said Miss Marple. "These magazines aren't very well written, but they write about the same sorts of things that happen in St. Mary Mead, and in the development too. Human nature is the same everywhere. Let's think about who wanted to kill Marina Gregg. What about the Italian butler? He went to London, I understand, on the day of his death. Does anyone know what he did there?"
"He arrived at 11:30 in the morning," said Craddock. "Nobody knows what he did until 1:45. Then he visited his bank and paid in £500 in cash." Miss Marple nodded.
£500, she said. "Yes, that's very interesting. So he was blackmailing someone and they had given him money. But who was it?"
"We have in London Ardwick Fenn, Lola Brewster and Margot Bence," said Craddock. "All 3 were at the party. All 3 were able to meet Giuseppe in London between 11:30 and 1:45. Ardwick Fenn was out of his office. Lola was shopping. Margot Bence was not in her studio. And you asked me," Craddock continued, "about the children. The children that Marina Gregg had adopted." He told Miss Marple what he had learned about Margot Bence.
"Margot Bence," said Miss Marple softly. "I had a feeling, you know, that children were important."
The door opened and Miss Knight came in with tea. "So, we've got a visitor, have we?" she said. "I'll just fetch another cup. I wonder, could you just come here for a minute, Mr. Craddock?" Craddock followed her out to the hall.
"Please be careful," she said. "It's not very good for our old lady to get excited about murders. We don't want her to have bad dreams."
Craddock looked at her in an amused way. "I don't think," he said gently, "that you or I could shock Miss Marple." He went back into the living room. After tea, Miss Marple said, "I want to think very carefully about what happened on the day of the fete. Margot Bence, you said, was taking photographs. Have you seen any of these photographs?" "Actually, I brought one to show you," Craddock took from his pocket the photograph that Margot Bence had given him of Marina Gregg meeting Heather Badcock. Miss Marple looked at it carefully. "Very interesting," she said. "People have described the look on Marina Gregg's face as a frozen look. But I don't think it's a look of fear. I think that it was shock. Please tell me exactly what Heather Badcock said to Marina Gregg. I suppose you have notes of what different people heard." Craddock nodded. "Yes," he said. He took out a small notebook from his pocket. "According to Mrs. Bantry, Heather Badcock told Marina that she had met her in Bermuda many years ago. Heather Badcock said she had chicken pox, but had got out of bed to get Marina's autograph. Mr. Rudd said that Mrs. Badcock told his wife she had left her bed when she had flu. She met Marina and got her autograph. Mr. Badcock's story was the same, but without any details." "I see," said Miss Marple. "Yes, I see. But why did she ruin her new dress?" "Who? Mrs. Badcock?" "Yes. It seems to me so odd. Unless... Of course. Oh," she said suddenly, "I think I must be very stupid." Miss Knight opened the door and turned on the light. "I think we want a little light in here," she said brightly. "Yes," said Miss Marple, "you are so right. That's exactly what we did want. A little light. I think that at last we've got it." The conversation seemed to be at an end, so Craddock got up. "One more thing," he said. "What memory from your past is in your mind now?" "Well," said Miss Marple, "I was reminded, just for a moment, of the Lauriston servant. She had to take messages on the telephone, and she wasn't very good at it. She wrote down the messages in a very confusing way, probably because her grammar was so bad. Oh dear," she added, "I am thankful that that girl is safely in Bournemouth." "The girl? What girl?" asked Craddock. "That girl who did dressmaking and went to see Giuseppe that day. What was her name? Gladys Dixon." "She's in Bournemouth, you say? How do you know that?" "I know," said Miss Marple, "because I sent her there. I gave her some money and told her to take a holiday." "What?" Craddock stared. "Why did you do that?" "Because I didn't want her to be killed, of course," said Miss Marple, looking at him calmly.